welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm sure Kimale in Abuja. We continue with our countdown. We're now keeping our eyes away from the 2023 elections, and today it is 53 days to the 2023 elections. And everybody is saying, go get your PVC. Above all, when you get your PVC, you need to make sure that on that day, which is February the 25th, 2023, you leave everything you are doing and ensure that you cast your ballot. That way, you are able to satisfy your conscience and fulfill the goal of your civic responsibility as a citizen of Nigeria. So we are anticipating the opportunity to elect the new leaders in February this year. Get your PVC and make your vote count. Well, tonight, we will stay on some of the issues raised, issues of competency, issues of capacity, issue of trust, issue of ability to govern Nigeria that was raised in the letter that was written on New Year Day by the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, directed at Nigerian youth. But before we get to do that, because I have a panel that will be doing that for us tonight, let's check out some of your political roundup stories.
The national chairman of the Action Democratic Party, Mr. Yabagi Sani, and the party presidential candidate is expressing optimism that 2023 will be better for Nigerians without the existence of the All Progressives Congress APC and the People's Democratic Party PDP, as he believes both parties are responsible for the woes of many Nigerians. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, Mr. Sani says both parties should be blamed squarely and pointedly for what he called the unprecedented calamity that has befallen the country over the years.
The pathetic and parlous condition in all facets of our national life illustrates the negative footprint of the two political parties.
The governorship candidate of the Labour Party in Abia State, Alex Oti, has expressed optimism that Abia State will deliver 90% of votes to the presidential flag bearer of the party, Mr. Peter Obi. Mr. Oti stated this while meeting with the party's presidential campaign council in Ohafia local government area of the state.
With the quality of people that I saw today, I'm very confident that P2P will be delivered in Abia State to the tune of about 90%.
The national women leader of the All Progressives Congress, Betta Edu, is calling on Nigerians to ensure they collect their permanent voter cards to enable them exercise their franchise in this year's election. Addressing journalists in Calabar, the Cross River State capital, after meeting with party supporters, Mrs. Edu notes that the party is also commencing door-to-door campaigns to ensure that the APC wins the coming election.
We have a strong candidate, the best on the ballot, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and we want every Nigerian woman to go out there, get your PVC, and vote for him. That way, we can have a seat on the table and we can have our 35% affirmative action. Beyond that, we'll be financially empowered.
The Deputy Director of the Tinubu Shetima Presidential Campaign Council in Adamawa State, Mr. Dahiru Hamandiko, is speaking to members of the council on the need to educate supporters of the APC to collect their PVCs. Addressing members of the committee in Yola, the Adamawa State capital, he charged them on the importance of educating people at the grassroots to get their PVC and vote for the All Progressives Congress. Governor Samuel Otom of Benue State is challenging Nigerians to match words with action and faith with works as they approach the 2023 general elections. The governor says if Nigerians are to fix Nigeria through the process of electing credible leaders to various offices, efforts must be made by his generation to do all to raise the next generation of leaders.
The Bible says that faith without works is dead. Everyone, whether Christians or Muslim, in Benue State should prepare this time to ensure that they apply works with their faith.
There you've been served, everyone, on your political roundup stories. So, yesterday's endorsement of Peter Obi by former President Olusegun Obasanjo has not simmered, and the ripples is still raising dust. The political parties who are directly or indirectly impacted by the endorsement of Peter Obi of the Labour Party have been reacting to the issue. On New Year's Day, in a 6-page open letter addressed to the Nigerian youth in particular, Obasanjo endorsed Peter Obi of the Labour Party as a preferred presidential candidate to vote for in the February 2023 election. Obasanjo described Obi as his mentee saying the former Anambra State governor has an edge in the February 25 election. Tonight, we will dissect these issues and look around all of those issues that have been raised by the former president. Let me introduce my panel to you on the program tonight. Here in our Abuja studio is a lawyer and a spokesperson of the Labour Party Presidential Campaign Council, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo. Thank you so much indeed for coming tonight.
Thank you very much, and thank you, viewers at home, for joining us.
Happy New Year to you.
Same to you.
And from London, virtually, is a brand new man in a hat. I can see him there. He's the presidential spokesperson of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Daniel Buhala. Thank you so much. The brand new man looking like a Londoner right there joins us virtually. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Good evening and happy.
And in our Lagos studio is the director of the Buhari Media Organization and a chieftain of the ABC, Mr. Niyi Akinshiju. Thank you so much for joining us. We are still in the festive mood, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you, the three wise men that have joined me tonight on the program. And let's begin. I know that the different political parties, one way or the other, that are represented tonight on the program, are going to be impacted by what President Obasanjo said. Now, the question is, for those who have questioned Obasanjo's electoral value, cannot take away the fact that that was a man that perhaps have governed this nation the most, either in khaki or as a civilian. He's being a former military head of state and a two-term president of this country. In fact, as Nigeria returned to democracy, he was the very first man that took over from the military. Now, since then, we've had a smooth run of our democratic process in Nigeria. And so when the man comes back and says, look, this is the man Nigerian youth should be voting for, can we take that, or can the Nigerian youth trust what Obasanjo said and take that to the polling booth on 25th of February 2023? So let's get talking, everyone. Perhaps I should begin first and foremost with Mr. Niyi Akinshiju from our Lagos studio. Your party is the incumbent party, and your party is seeking to retain power. How does this look so much like a blow to your party? This is not the first time you're getting a letter that is not comfortable with your party, but yet another one that is not endorsing your party, meaning that he has also criticized the running of this government, the running of this country by the government of the APC in that letter. How does this come to your party, Mr. Akinshiju?
Thank you very much, Sheung. First, I'm also a member of the Public and Media Affairs Directorate of the APC-PCC. And by virtue of that, I'm also a spokesperson of the APC-PCC, talking directly to the issues at hand. I think that we have established a track of not exactly embracing, the person and the personality of General Olusegun Obasanjo. As far as we are concerned, there are three statesmen. We have 4 living former Nigerian head of states in the person of General Gowon, General Babangida, General Abdul Salam, and of course General Olusegun Obasanjo. To our mind, those first 3, Gowon, Babangida and Abdul Salam, had shown themselves and established themselves as statesmen. Hardly do you see them come into the arena. And to a large extent, we have extended our respect to them over the time. Then, of course, we are not bothered about this endorsement. For us, it's so much of wind, so much of violence of wind. And because to our mind, the exact precedence, the exact background to the person of General Obasanjo in terms of performance in office does not sell him to us as a credible individual that we should seek his endorsement. And of course, since 2019, he had gone his way, and we have not been bothered. We know that during his term, 7-8 years in office, It didn't perform, you know, despite all the opportunities, despite all available resources, you know, at its beck and call. When the world was in a festive of what do I call it, tailwind, when the world was in a festive of opportunities, so much that the price of crude oil was jumping. It moved from $19 a barrel, you know, in 2001, 2002, 2003, to more than $30 per barrel. You know, by 2007, it had moved to more than $70. But despite that, you know, in 2003 to 2004, when the National Living Standards Survey was conducted by our own National Bureau of Statistics, more than 62% of Nigerians were living in absolute poverty. That time that we were making so much money. And in that, the National Living Standard Survey is like this current multidimensional poverty index survey. In that survey, one of the indicators was the monetary value, monetary metric, you know, of poverty, which was measured at more than 69%. And we had just about 140 million Nigerians at that time. So you are talking of a government, of an administration that has so much resources to play with. But because there was a lack of processes, a lack of policy conception, and lack of policy, you know, implementation, Nigerians were more poorer, you know, despite that kind of resources we had. Now, we can also say that the highest possible level of inflation this country you know, that had risen in this country since 2000 to 2022 was recorded during that administration at 28.2%, you know, in 2005 August. Before, in July, it was 26, you know, in August it went to 28%. And till today, we have no other administration that even achieved that kind of inflation rate. So, and of course, we are talking about the democratic credentials, you know, of General Obasanjo in office. What you come about is a hopeful distress, you know, memory of how the state officials, state security agencies and all that were used, you know, to harass people in government, harass governors. Governors were actually kidnapped, you know, by state security agencies. This is someone that will claim democratic credentials. You know, we have the case of Anambra, even in the same case of Peter Obi, you know, and Ngige, and
Mr. Kishiju, I asked you that question because in the description of former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and I'd like you maybe in 60 seconds to quickly wrap up on this note and speak specifically, you've given us a background and some of those indices you think that to buttress your point. But the former president had described the last 7 years as perilous. Look at some of the things he said. He said the last 7.5 years have no doubt been eventful and stressful years for many Nigerians. We have moved from frying pan to fire and from mountaintop to the valley. Our leaders have done their best, but their best has turned out to be not the best for Nigeria and Nigerians at home and abroad. For most Nigerians, it was hell on earth. It's describing the government under your APC government, under Buhari. Those of you who are alive should thank God for his mercies, brace ourselves for the remaining few months of his administration, and pray and work very hard for an immediate better future of liberation, restoration, and great hope and expectation. This is how former President Obasanjo has described your party, the government under the realms of affairs under your party.
Yeah, I just told you that under PDP and the administration of General Obasanjo, more than 64% of Nigerians were poor, despite the opportunities, the global opportunities, and of course.
But can you speak specifically to the issues that he raised about what he had described as perilous? That is like frying pan to fire. Let's forget what has happened. Can you define what has happened under the government of the APC?
I'm comparing now. The number of poor people in Nigeria by both the World Bank statistics and the NBS statistics had reduced compared to the numbers of poor during Obasanjo's time. And that is despite the opportunities and resources available. And even now, talking about infrastructural delivery, I challenge anybody in PDP to tell us the kind of infrastructural projects that have been delivered during that time when there was so much money to play around with, compared to what we have now, when we have lesser resources, either at the level of recession that we experienced and we managed ourselves effectively to come out of, and of course the recession precipitated by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are talking of a government that had creatively administered Nigeria, despite headwind, global headwind, domestic headwind, of course security issues, but the important thing is that in that constitution of
let's spread the love around the room now.
Administration has been able to deliver as much as possible.
To what former President Obasanjo said. Let me go to London with Mr. Buala. I've seen some of your responses. Some include you're inferring that the president is indirectly, the former president is indirectly pushing for a third term. But I will speak to one of those issues that he raised that perhaps relate to your candidate and to your party. But just like I asked Mr. Nia Kinshu, how does this come to your party?
Well, thank you for having me, and good evening to Nigerians. You see, no doubt the letter of the elder statesman, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, there are quite a number of things in that letter that cannot be argued, like his assertion about APC. Yes, I agree with him that the last 8 years was a perilous time. It was a period, or it is a period, where Nigerians will not want to think of it again or ever think that we will have a repeat of that, which is the reason why I believe that Nigerians are not going to vote APC in this election. So he's right in that. But the part that is wrong, which can be summarized in the fourth to the last paragraph of that letter, in fact, the big one, where he referred to Peter Obi as a needle that has a string, a rope in it, where he said he can as easily be controlled when he goes wrong. That is the crux of his letter. Obasanjo is in search of a third term by proxy. In other words, he is saying that Peter Obi is a puppet, and that's why I believe he should be voted for, because at any given time he goes wrong, I'm guaranteeing you people, the Nigerian people, I am going to control him this way or control him that. But let us go to the fact and issue. Obasanjo, to the greatest respect, lacks the moral turpitude to become the father of the nation. There are about 5 presidents, former presidents alive today. None among them interferes with the country and with every president like a meddlesome interloper like President Obasanjo. Yet, if you look at the letter, from the beginning to the last, it is all about me, my, and I. Me, my, and I. He rated his own administration from 1999 to 2007 as impeccable, but he could not find any element of praise to give to any administration after him. And in fact, he did not even praise any administration before him. In other words, Obasanjo believes that he has the celestial powers to predict the future of Nigeria and the leadership of Nigeria. Unfortunately for him, that attitude is antithetical to democratic ideals and governance. The democracy that was handed to us by the First World is a democracy of popular participation by the people. In other words, it's a democracy where the people choose on the basis of their choices and not one man using a letter to threaten and intimidate the entire nation that if a certain direction is not taken, then doom lie ahead. But let us look at the character of that person, because it is not just about the message, it's about the messenger. If the messenger, it does not have a profile, his message cannot be conveyed by your television house. And so let's look at it. Obasanjo thinks that democracy is as defined by him. He has virtually destroyed every concept of democracy in his entire reign. To begin with, when we talk about whether he has weight or whether he has a voter's value, when he was brought up in 1998, as soon as he got out of the prison, according to the former governor from the Southeast, he said Obasanjo did not even have 200,000 to buy the form. He bought for him. Obasanjo today has Otafan, has Presidential Library, and Otafan supplies product not only to Nigeria, but to the rest of Africa. That's point number one. Point number two, people came together and donated their resources and their infrastructure and structure to make him a president. Even in 2003, when just his vice presidential candidate threatened to quit, he was fidgeting until people came together and the vice president again committed the loyalty to him, and then they went on. He did not win his polling unit in 1999. In 2003, they practically rigged his polling unit. So if you look at it on the evidence of value, Obasanjo does not have the moral ground to begin to call the presidential aspirants or candidates of a political party as people that he could direct. And again, let me say this, and it's very important. Obasanjo is the only president incomparable with even Asiwaju and Peter Obi and Atiku. All of them, I will make the case that they have a better quality than Obasanjo. Let me give you an example. Obasanjo ordered the killing in Odi. Obasanjo ceded Nigerian vacancy to the foreign country because of allegedly his ambition to become the United States Secretary General. Obasanjo, under a democratic governance, ordered the shoot at sight of OPC people. Obasanjo's treatment of Asari Dokubo under a democratic governance can better be described as a military dictator. Obasanjo has instituted the foundation of what they call Ghana must go politics in the National Assembly. It has been reported. Obasanjo used 3 people to impeach a sitting governor in Jos and started dealing with him. Obasanjo picked some lawmakers in Bayelsa, brought them to a hotel in Abuja and impeached a sitting president. Obasanjo had media, international media houses speaking to him. They asked him questions he was not comfortable about. He was threatening to send them out of Nigeria. Obasanjo appeared before Stephen of Hard Talk BBC when he was questioned about corruption in his family, and Obasanjo threatened that if it was not out of courtesy, he would take up the matter against that person. This is the picture of the person that now has stand as the alpha and omega of democratic ideals. It is even strange to me when he projects Peter Obi as better candidate. Is it not the Peter Obi that the Panama paper indicted? Is it not the Peter Obi that governed in Anambra for the period that he has governed? He domiciled the money of Anambra in a bank to which he was a shareholder, and he was appropriating profit to himself. Is it the Peter Obi that told the whole world he doesn't have a house?
Mr. Bwala, apologies to jump in quickly. I mean, anyone who is hearing, who listen to you now, we imagine that this is coming out of bitterness because perhaps if the endorsement had come the way of your candidate, you probably will not be speaking like this. The person and the man you're referring to, your candidate had gone to visit him even before he got the ticket of your party. And he said at the time that I've come to see my boss. He referred to him as such. So if Obasanjo lacked any weight, as you have described, or lacked any electoral value, or is inconsequential, as you have described, why would your principal or your candidate even go to visit him? And he described him as his boss.
Because Obasanjo was indeed his boss by virtue of being the president when he was a vice. But Atiku knows politics and started politics before Obasanjo. That's one. And Atiku committed his resources to the actualization of Obasanjo's presidency. Point number one. Point number two, the visiting to Obasanjo and in fact any other stakeholder in Nigeria is out of courtesy. Not because Atiku expected Obasanjo to bring some vote from Otafam or from somewhere in Ogun State for him. And thirdly, when we talk about out of bitterness, if there is any, I wouldn't have had a problem. When he endorsed Atiku in 2019, I was in APC and I criticized the same. I criticized it on the premise that we run a democracy where if you think you are powerful enough to endorse a candidate, that is your constitutional right. But then follow him to campaigns and rallies and town halls and prove your own popularity by the people you gather, by the conversation you make. But you cannot sit in the comfort of your home and write a letter like an epistle from Paul the Apostle, warning Nigerian nation that if you do not support this person, there is a problem. Read his letter. This letter writing has been his strategy of denigrating people who are presidents in their country. You can't find that anywhere in the third world or in the first world. He sat in his letter, he wrote and said Jonathan was training 1,000 snipers, the gentle Jonathan, to kill citizens. He wrote a letter to Buhari and said Buhari was trying to incite destructive secession in the country. And now he's writing another letter to achieve. Everybody has the capacity to write a letter. But the thing is, if you are a stakeholder, you are powerful. What we are saying is it is your right. But do not extend your right as a command. The right you have does not translate into usurping the right of other citizens.
All right,
That's the point we are saying.
Let's allow Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo to come in now. And one of the things that former President Obasanjo said, and this is making reference to Peter Obi, and let me allow our viewers to see this. He says, one other important point to make about Peter Obi is that he's a needle with thread attached to it from north and south, and he may not get lost. In other words, he has people who can pull his ears if and when necessary. He has a young and able running mate with a clean track record of achievement both in public and private life. That statement has now been criticized as such that Obasanjo is perhaps seeing Peter Obi as a puppet that he can play around with as soon as he gets into office.
Well, first and foremost, there is the saying that the greatest place in hell will be reserved for those who keep silent in times of moral crisis. Nigeria is going bad, not because of the violence of the bad people, but because of the silence of the good ones. Obasanjo has refused to keep silent in times of moral crisis. We are in a crisis in this country. Obasanjo wants to escape going to hell by being an accomplice to corrupt leaders, because any nation that votes corrupt politicians are no longer victims, but accomplices. Now, Obasanjo has never kept silent in times of moral crisis. He went to jail because of it, and he came out, became a president, like you rightly pointed out. 11 years, this man governed Nigeria cumulatively as a military president and as a civilian president. No Nigerian has had that privilege. And fortunately for him, and unfortunately for them, no Nigeria may be privileged to have it again. Except
President Buhari, if he ends his term,
yes.
As soon as he ends his term, he'll be able to fall between the rank of the likes
9 years plus
of Olusegun Obasanjo.
No, 9 years plus. Cumulative.
We're talking about those who have been head of state, military, and civilian.
Obasanjo has 11 years. Why I brought this issue is that Obasanjo knows everything that is required to sit on that seat. Let us come to his letter. In law, the reasons for a judgment is more important than the judgment itself. That's why when a court gives judgment, we the lawyers say, no, we want to hear their reasons. Let us hear the reasons Obasanjo enumerated in his letters. He said, whoever wants to be the president must meet up with 4 factors, which he summarized in the acronym TVCP. Track record of ability and performance. You must check the antecedents. You must check the past. Then he talked about vision that is authentic, honest, and realistic. You must check the future. Then he talked about character and attributes of a child of God and obedience to God. That's talking about integrity. Who are you when nobody is looking at you? Then he talked about physical and mental abilities with soundness of mind. I can't put it in a better form. He's talking about the qualities that we need in the next leader. When I heard these gentlemen talk, I was really asking myself, is Obasanjo in the ticket in 2023? Because they were just talking about Obasanjo this, Obasanjo that. And we are talking about recruiting the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I will tell you what Obasanjo saw in Peter Obi, and then you will do the matchmaking, and the Nigerians will do the judgment. Obasanjo saw in a man who has the capability to secure and unite this country. He did it in Anambra State. He secured Anambra State from being the worst secured state to the best by the confirmation of the IG of police then, Muhammad. He saw in Peter Obi a man that will unite through not leaving anybody behind. No ethnic, no religious, no section will be left behind in P2B's judgment, in P2B's government. Obasanjo looked at P2B and saw a man that would shift emphasis from consumption to production through running a production-centered economy driven by agrarian revolution and export-oriented industrialization. Obasanjo saw in a man who would build world-class and expansive physical infrastructure, not through borrowing, but through integrated public-private partnership and entrepreneurial public sector governance. He saw in P2B a man who will leapfrog this country into the fourth industrial revolution through scientific and technological innovations to create digital economy. Obasanjo saw all these things and sat down and wrote a letter and said, if we want a Nigeria that should be redirected from poverty to prosperity, the only man that can do it is P2B. One of the reasons Obasanjo considered by endorsing P2B is because he knows that he is a man that will embark on effective legal and institutional reforms to aggressively fight corruption, entrench rule of law, reduce cost of governance, plug wastages, and ensure the establishment of honest and efficient civil service. Obasanjo knows that no man with such quality like this can be a puppet. Obasanjo does not even want a puppet to govern Nigeria.
But he has said it here.
Yes.
That meaning people who can pull his ears.
Exactly.
That is a needle with thread attached. So it means that there are people who can actually caution P2B.
No,
Do you want a president that someone from somewhere can control by pulling the thread on their needle, or someone that you can pull the ears of a president? Is that the CEO that you want to employ?
I was coming to that. Because what Obasanjo meant was simply that democracy is our lekon, Benny, not a milokon. It's a collective thing. Obasanjo knows that no man can know it all. And all the people that claim that know it all have brought indescribable destruction to this country. You and I, you are aware of the milokons. When you talk about the Miloko, it's not an exclusive copyright of Tinubu. Atiku and Tinubu, they are their Milokos. Did you not hear that Northerners should vote only the North, not Yoruba, not Igbo candidate by Atiku? What is that? That's a Miloko. Have you not heard that I single-handedly made Buhari president? A man who boasted in Ogun, a Tinubu, that he can single-handedly make Buhari president, can no longer single-handedly make himself president. I don't know why he's campaigning. That is what Obasanjo is telling you, that P2B is not an Emilokon. P2B is an Awalekon, a man who is not going to act alone, who will listen. I am not going to follow a commander-in-chief that doesn't listen, because no man knows it all. If you're a medical doctor, you're not a lawyer. If you're a lawyer, you're not an engineer. P2B has said it clearly that the Nigerian people are going to be the president through him.
All right.
And that he, when he was in the labor retreat, he called the labor people. He said, bring your demands, write it down. We will sit together. We will look at it together. We will sign when we have agreed on what we will achieve. And don't leave after the election. Come and continue monitoring it to see whether I am achieving it. That is what Obasanjo means. I'm not talking about... Let me just make one point more.
Okay.
P2B was a governor under APGA. APGA had only one state. No godfather up, no godfather down. Was he a puppet to anybody? And you're talking about when he is the president. No, he listens.
All right. Let me allow Mr. Akinshiju to defend, definitely, for all those who understand the politics of Nigeria. A lot of people will understand what former President Obasanjo is talking about here when he made reference to Emilokon. And I try to read this quickly for you to be able to respond to. He says, and I quote, "Let me say straight away that Emiloko might turn interpretation, and I have paid my dues are one and the same thing, and a wrong attitude and mentality for the leadership of Nigeria now. They cannot, from the new pedestal, to reinvent and to invest in a new Nigeria based on an all-Nigeria government for the liberation and restoration of Nigeria. Such a government must have representation from all sectors of our national life, public, private, civil society, professional, labor, employers, and the diaspora." How do you defend your principle that have been criticized in Obasanjo's letter as making reference to himself as somewhat an entitlement effect in getting into the presidential chair?
No politicians, as a matter of fact, since 1999, has shown liberalism, has shown freedom of choice within his political enclave as Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But before I get to that, I quickly want to correct an impression by lawyer Okonkwo about his principal. Please let him quickly go and check the poverty level of Anambra State in 2010. More than 53% of Anambra people were poor, were classified as living in extreme poverty. In 2010, Mr. Peter Obi was unfortunately the governor of that state at that time. That's just by the way. Now, talking about Emiloko and Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu, if you will recall, in 2007, when the presidential candidate of the PDP was involved in a spat, and of course he was more or less kicked out of the PDP in 2007. He found home in a party mainly influenced by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the ACN, and he was made the candidate. You know, a normal Nigerian politician wouldn't have allowed that. That was also an opportunity for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to announce his intention for the presidency in that year. But he did not. He allowed Waziri Atiku, to pick the ticket of the ACN. In 2011, the same thing. He allowed Mr. Ribadu to pick the ticket of the party that he had a major influence in. So it is not about him, and he has shown it. This has been a candidate, a person that since 2007 that he had left office had not occupied any other office, despite the obvious influence, that he wields across the country. Especially even in Lagos State. If he had wanted to be a senator, if he had wanted to be anything, he would have secured it. But because he has this altruism, and of course he has this capacity to look at the bigger picture, it's so coming into 2023. Yes, if he says in a family meeting, and let us correct that, where he made that declaration was a family meeting. It was not a public space. He did not write a letter. He did not announce it. He did not call a press conference. He was meeting with colleagues. He was meeting with colleagues, members of his close political family, and he was making a need for an argument.
And he's not been denied, but your principal has not denied. He's owned up to it, isn't it?
No, I am not talking about him. No, I said that statement was made within a family circle. He never claimed it as a public announcement. It was not a public acclamation by him. He was engaging his political family, his close political family.
Like a reference made to law.
I don't think that is out of place.
It's fairly incriminating.
And I don't also think it should be a reason, for
the commission of a crime. So, if he says it and he has not denied it,
please, can you come again? I can't hear you clearly.
Resonated, isn't it? Is that this time that you're saying that is not relevant any longer?
Please come again. I can't hear the earlier part of the question.
All right, so let's move on if you can hear it. So let me play these sound bites to Mr. Daniel Buala of what a member of his party, the governor of Rivers State, said today. I'll play that sound bite to you and allow you to respond.
You worked under somebody. The person had recommended to Nigerians another person. Is it me? You know what I call it, recommendation? I worked with somebody for 8 years. And we're using it as a campaign that when we're in office, we did well. Then my boss is recommending another person not to be. There's something fundamentally wrong. Am I the one? Am I the one? So why me? Am I a passenger who made recommendation for that person? Go and hold your boss who recommended another person rather than you. And I was praying that the person should not say anything. When I saw the letter last night, I was touched. If your principal cannot recommend you, then there's something fundamentally wrong. After all, you people went to see your principal, to lobby your principal to recommend you. It took your principal a long time. He now wrote a letter to all Nigerians. So look, I'm not too comfortable. I mean, I'm not bothered about the other people. This one work with you. He work with you. He knows. So
all right, you heard the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike there, Mr. Bwala. I'd like you to also respond based on what Governor Wike has said. President Obasanjo said in his letter, quote, none of the contestants is a saint, but when compares their character, antecedent, their understanding, knowledge, discipline, and vitality that they can bring to bear, and the great efforts required to stay focused on the job, particularly looking at where the country is today, and with the experience on the job that I personally had, Peter Obi is a mentee as an edge. That means that, in comparison, if Atiku was a mentee, he prefers Peter Obi as a mentee to Atiku Abubakar. Your response, Mr. Bwala.
Well, you know, because of technology, I didn't hear what Wike said, but I think I saw it earlier today. But let me respond to Obasanjo and then I come to him. You see, Obasanjo's assertion there is wrong. I will only, in our practice of law, there's this thing we say, I rest my case on the evidence of the plaintiff. In 2019, you have had Obasanjo. He took time in 25 minutes when he was endorsing Atiku Abubakar to shower encomium on Atiku on the evidence of economic savviness, on the evidence of character, on the evidence of leadership, and on the evidence of governance. In the same speech, he said that he considered Atiku as one of the best things that happened to him, and that's why when people were saying that he did not transmit power, it is ridiculous, because Atiku handled the government properly. So when somebody is consistently inconsistent and inconsistently consistent, then the evidence of that person is not admissible in court. That's why it's difficult for you to predict if he moves on the basis of mood swing. And the question you will ask him is, what happened? What has changed from 2019 to now? It is just the idea that he has found a pin and a thread that he can use as a puppet master and control and govern the third time through that person. I take you back to what Peter Obi said, Governor Wike. You see, Governor Wike is a governor in our party. The unfortunate thing about Governor Wike is this fact that he has not learned the principles of democracy, that you can suffer defeat and bounce back again when you're able to reinvent yourself. Since he lost the primaries, he has never been himself. All you need is to look at his utterances. Totally inconsistent with the decorum that is required of a governor, not to talk of the governor of one of the leading states in the country. That's point number one. Point number two, he consistently said he does not have a problem with Atiku, but it's with Iyochayu. Yet Atiku, who has not said a word in the past 5 months, is the same Atiku he kept hammering and hammering and hammering. Three, and fundamentally, they came to London here to discuss business. They met in Kensington. The business failed because their demands were considered by Asiwaju as too much a demand, because he thought that after 5 months of trying to rope the boat of PDP, why should the poll still put Atiku and PDP as leading? So he concluded that their value could not be as expressed by themselves. So therefore, he now felt he could not accede to that. They came back and are now looking for shelter.
Okay, so let me allow Mr. Within the few times that we have led, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo. In all of this, your candidate has gotten a tick, an endorsement from President Obasanjo, but can that take him into the Aso Rock Villa in next year, after the next year's election? That's the big question.
Good. First of all, let me remind NI, because I said the failure of PDP and APC has made their spokespersons compulsive liars. And I'm talking statistics to be fact-checked. Dr. McCall, the Director General of the Poverty Alleviation Program under PDP, said Anambra State had the lowest poverty rate. We will be fact-checked for you to know. They don't have any other thing to offer. And when it came to the issue of endorsement, you saw his white lie. APC craved and nearly stole Obasanjo's endorsement. They went to him, and after talking with him secretly, they came out publicly to tell Nigerians that Obasanjo has endorsed them. He was there in the open. And Obasanjo had to retrieve his mandate. Because I've said it that everybody in APC is a thief, including animals. And even endorsement, they want to steal. And he's there saying that APC does not need Obasanjo's endorsement.
Obasanjo
so what are they doing?
Be the president.
Obasanjo is one person. Obasanjo believes in our lekon. Obasanjo believes that the youths should rise up. The topic of his letter is an appeal to Nigerians, especially the youths. So Obasanjo is appealing to Nigerians that we should collectively rise up to this occasion and collectively vote for P2B. So Obasanjo never made any fuss about that he himself. Obasanjo is not an Imiloko.
we need to
wrap up single-handedly make himself president.
We're totally out of
what
time.
I'm saying is that 2023, it is not a tick from Obasanjo. Babachi Lawa was here, he ticked.
Adebanjo
was here, he ticked.
Thank you so much.
Nigerians are ticking.
Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo, Daniel Boala, and Iya Akinshiju, all spokesperson of the different political parties. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We're totally out of time, and that's our show for today. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'm sure Kimaloe. God bless you.